Hey everyone, thanks so much for hopping on the Sports Conf, Google Hangout, G Plus Hangout. We've got a great 50 minutes set up here for you. Sorry we're a few minutes late getting started, but we are here to talk about social media. We're here to talk about Sochi, the Olympics. We're going to talk about Olympic brands. We've got Maura Cheeks from the USOC here. We've got Peter Carlisle from Octagon's Olympic and Action Sports Department. Zack Sugarman, who's a VP of Social Media and Digital over at Wasserman Media Group, and we've got 2010 Olympic bronze medal Bobsledder, Elana Meyers, and my name is Steve Mesler. I'm a 2010 Olympic gold medalist and three-time Olympian in the U.S. In the sport of four-man bobsled. I'll be watching my boys compete here in a month or so. I am now retired, and I am a founder and executive director of an organization of a nonprofit called Classroom Champions. So to start off with, I want to be able to go through and give a little bit more of detailed introduction to each of these guys as we're going to tee off each of them with one question, hear their opinion, let them kind of get in the flow, and then we're going to have some debate back and forth between everybody around a few questions, again, around social media, the Sochi Olympic platform, and what everybody's doing out there. And then we're also going to be taking your questions if I understand what's going on correctly. So we're going to start off with Maura. Maura Cheeks is the manager of social media strategy over at the U.S. Olympic Committee. She's sitting in New York City right now. Maura, in the past, has worked with the Knicks, which, boo, I'm a little bit biased there as a Pistons fan. She currently oversees all the social media, including day-to-day content promotions, strategic planning, cross-functional digital marketing programs, and sponsor integration for the USOC. That's a mouthful, Maura. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Steve. Yep, so as Steve mentioned, I manage all of our day-to-day content across the USOC social platforms. So I oversee what we're posting every day. I oversee our larger content strategy that we plan out with sponsors and interacting with athletes and all of the national governing bodies of each sport. So sort of a lot to manage, but a great digital content team that I work with who manages the content that goes up on the website, teamusa.org, and then I work with all of our internal teams, so partnership marketing, NGB marketing, so across a lot of different areas.
Great. So, and that's a good background for yourself. And to tee off your question, the one thing I think you could really help set the premise for the rest of the talk, around the rest of the hangout around your perspective is, can you explain to everybody out there what the USOC's role is in the social media world around engaging your brand, not only your brand but also your sponsors' brands, and what you guys have planned, a little bit about what you guys have planned heading into Sochi here in a couple minutes.
Sure. So I joined the USOC a little bit before London, and my role really in joining was to kind of shape our social media strategy to be the voice of Team USA as opposed to the US Olympic Committee. So you'll see across all of our social platforms, we really try to be more fan-facing and really be a team as opposed to the committee. So that's really my role in shaping how we communicate to our fans. So you'll see a lot of the content that we post is to tell the athletes' stories. You'll see a lot of features and tons of content on teamusa.org. And then in addition to telling the athletes' stories, we really try and focus on breaking news. So constantly keeping a pulse on what the NGBs are doing, what the competition is. You'll see a lot of interaction between the USOC social platforms and athletes because we really want to have a real voice to our platforms. In terms of the games, what we really try and do is, again, the breaking news, but then also doing a lot of behind the scenes and really try to share what the Olympic movement is and what Team USA is with fans who, might not ever have the chance to go to an Olympics. So really trying to show, what are the athletes doing? How are they training? What are they eating? What's happening at USA House? So really trying to bring that behind the scenes feel in addition to just breaking news and reporting results. So really trying to just share who these athletes are and who is the voice of and the faces of Team USA.
Awesome. Well, great. Thanks for the overview. We're going to look forward to getting your view and, because of your position, also the U.S. Olympic Committee's view on some of these subjects we're going to hop into. Next up, we're going to welcome Peter, again, Managing Director of Octagon's Olympic and Action Sports Department. Peter, thanks so much for hopping on.
Thanks for having me.
I'm personally really excited to hear some of your takes on some of these things. Peter, if we got your bio correct, you're a lawyer by trade. Peter's one of only two action sports agents or sports agents to be inducted into the Sports Business Journal's 40 Under 40 Hall of Fame. That's awesome. Congrats.
Thanks.
And you also oversee Olympic and action sports clients around negotiations, endorsements, licensing, and merchandising over at Octagon. Some of your clients include, some people that we may or may not have heard. People like maybe Michael Phelps, Natalie Coughlin, Hannah Teeter, Paula Ono, Seth Westcott. You notice I ended with a bunch of the Winter Olympians. And really, Peter, one of the first things that when I saw you were going to be part of this panel, one of the first things that I thought of was looking to get your opinion on something, whether you're worried about heading into there. There's something called the IOC's Rule 40, the blackout rule. Maybe you can give everybody out there a little bit of, a little synopsis of that, and then are you worried about that from your athlete's perspective? Are you worried about what may come up and what might bubble up there for them on social media?
Well, good question. I mean, first of all, Rule 40 basically restricts athletes, coaches, officials. I mean, essentially, those that are subject to the code of conduct as they go into the games, just restricts them from using their name, likeness, or image for any advertising purposes during the game, unless it's they're granted permission by the IOC on the U.S. side through the USOC, which generally happens through their official sponsorship program. So, in essence, unless you're an official sponsor of the Olympics, you can't use an athlete to promote or advertise anything, and so it complicates things for the athletes, just in that they've got to restrict whatever relationship they may have with a non-Olympic sponsor, so that that company does not use their name, likeness, or image during the games. But during the games themselves, I mean, to answer your question as to whether it's something that we worry about, we don't worry about it so much during the games. I mean, you can't control every usage out there, but if you read the rule, I mean, it's pretty clear that that athletes are restricted from authorizing the use of their name, likeness, and image, and really all that can be expected of an athlete is that when they enter into some commercial relationship with a sponsor, that they inform them of what the sponsor can't do, and that they're very clear that they're not authorizing that company to use them during the blackout period. So it's not something that we really worry about, and in some cases, some of the instances where an athlete has been used by a non-Olympic sponsor during the games, I mean, sometimes that's just through no permission that the athlete has granted, but rather just some third-party company misusing an athlete's name, likeness, or image without their permission. And in those cases, it's really nothing that either the athlete or we can do about it.
Mm-hmm. And you see that maybe potential of that coming up, where companies are going to try to leverage that via social media because it's just so easy to do?
Well, it does happen. I mean, companies are, I think, reluctant to do it without some understanding or deal with the athlete, because if they do, then they're going to be subject to a potential misappropriation claim or some other claim that the athlete might have against the company. So, I mean, it'd be foolish for a company to do that. But I think sometimes what you have is companies that may have relationships with the athletes that even though they have not been given permission to use the athlete during the games, inadvertently do it or do it without the knowledge that it may create a problem for the athlete. So we're just very careful to ensure that the athletes are informed as to how Rule 40 works, and that they have clarified for their sponsors that they can't use their name, likeness, or image during the games.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thanks. Thanks for that. We're gonna go on to our next guest here, Elana Meyers. Elana, thanks for joining us from all the way over in Eagles, Austria, which is just outside of Innsbruck. How's it going over there?
So far, so good. We got a lot of snow today, so dealing with that a little bit, but so far, so good.
All right. That is, Eagles is one of my favorite places on the World Cup tour. So Elana Meyers is a 2010 Olympic bronze medalist. She is also the driver of currently USA 1. And Elana, if I'm not mistaken, ranked number 2 in the world right now?
Yes.
Ranked number 2 in the world? Yes, number 2 in the world. She's also in the process of getting her MBA as we speak. Elana is also an athlete mentor for for our organization, Classroom Champions, as well as an ambassador for Right to Play. She's all over the place in social media. Elana, what kind of interactions have you seen for yourself with sponsors? How is the, from 4 years ago to today, how have you seen your interaction with sponsors changing because of social media?
It's changed tremendously. The influence of social media has not only increased our visibility, especially in a sport like bobsled. In bobsled, it's a very unique sport. There's not a lot of people who follow it, but we do have some few loyal, faithful fans, which we're grateful for. But social media really gives us a platform to allow us to connect with our sponsors and allow us to connect our fans with our sponsors. So before, if I'm sponsored by a certain company, only the people who follow bobsled know it. Now, people who follow me on Twitter, who might have just followed me because they read an article in USA Today or something like that, not necessarily because they're bobsled fans, know about our sponsors and have that connection. Also, if I have a good race result, or if something goes really well, I can connect it to my sponsors and show thanks for the different kind of support they've given me.
So it's just another way for you to. So can you give us any examples? Anybody out there that you've been engaging with or has been engaging with you in a cool or different way?
I think the biggest thing is one of my sponsors is BMW, and we're driving BMW sleds now. So a lot of our sponsorship relationship related to that, and the fact that we have these sleds that we can take pictures of, that we can interact with, that we can show people who are car fans, people who love automotives, we can relate to them in some different way now. We can relate BMW, which is the product, to people who are not only interested in the sport of bobsled, but also in auto racing or just cars in general. So it's really opened up our fan base and our platform.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And we're going to get to our last guest here in a second. If you're just joining us, this is #SportsConf. This is the Sochi social media room. We're going to be talking about the Olympics and how social media has been tying in. The last and certainly not least, our guest, Zack Sugarman. Zack is the Vice President of Social Media and Digital over at Wasserman. Zack, thanks for hopping on.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks, everyone. Pleasure to join.
And Zack's got over 8 years of strategic digital marketing and social media experience. Has social media, digital marketing been around for 8 years, man?
No.
Pretty much top it off.
Social, actually, Facebook was on by 2005 when I was in college. We were about school number 4 to get it. But no, it's really obviously advanced and changed dynamically over the times, and even month to month it changes. But starting back in the day with some action sports specific websites under Wasserman, and evolving that into social media with athletes as we've grown. And from a brand consulting standpoint, I mean, we work with social and digital strategy and then execution of those strategies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, Zack's
brands and athletes.
Yeah, exactly. And from brands and athletes, I mean, looking, doing a little bit more research on you, looking at some of your clients have included from Oakley to Dodge, Puma, Targets, the Atlanta Hawks, and even the USOC.
Yeah, we had the pleasure of working with more in the USOC before London in terms of kind of digital strategy around their website, social presence, and a lot of the fantastic content that she's brought to the table and making it more fan-facing.
Yeah, and it's changed so much over the last, 4 years since I was competing in Vancouver, but even the last year and a half since London. So one thing we were talking about a little bit before in the green room before we, or the virtual green room before we started here today, was, I want to know, what do you think, who's doing some cool stuff out there? What are companies doing that you're seeing that are really, catching your eye, that, that's a great way to utilize social?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier. I think P&G definitely is a great example here with their Thank You Mom campaign. A lot of you may have seen a commercial drop to Golden Globes on Sunday night, but they check a lot of the boxes when we talk about great content. Great content, people share great content. Good content, people look at. And it's really the difference of creating that great content and getting them to share is evoking some emotion on the passionate audience. You want to create storytellers and have them evangelize the social media space. I think P&G is doing this by tapping into, the raw, inspiring emotion of thanking your mom or because of mom. And the way they're creating content, they have several different formats and outputs where they're distributing to put it where everyone is consuming these content on all these various platforms. And, they have a great YouTube landing page with a lot of content, a lot of behind the scenes with athletes telling stories of their mom and getting into it. And then from social conversations around the hashtag #ThankYouMom and because of mom, up on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, etc. a lot of great stuff. And I think, too, it allows P&G to tap into some of their other brand ambassadors. I mean, I just did a quick search on the Because of Mom, and one of the tweets that popped up was from Troy Polamalu in the NFL, you know, sharing the video and the awe-inspiring stuff and talking about his mom. I think it's something everyone can relate to and really creates that emotional response. And come Olympics, I think it's even going to be better.
It's almost like it's too easy. I mean, who can say anything bad about a Thank You Mom campaign, right? Like,
it's true, right? It's accessible, evokes those, you know, emotional responses, and again, that's why it's a great example. And I think come game time during the Olympics, with some of the content they'll be able to do and athletes sharing it in real time, I mean, it really does draw you in, tell a story, and you know, a lot of people are going to share that, and
well,
that's going to create a lot of
And to your point exactly, sorry to cut you off, to your point exactly, when it comes to, and Peter, maybe you can drop in on this one, how do you think that the engagement that's happening on social media and all these brands that are really activating, and we're seeing commercials drawing people towards hashtags, how is that going to affect viewership? What do you think that's going to be doing to Americans watching and tuning in?
Well, I mean, I think that anytime you can expand the relevance of any of the individual athletes or the sports themselves, I mean, you're going to benefit viewership. And I think one of the great challenges in the Olympic space is for many it was something that would happen every 2 years, and you know, they'd start to think about it when NBC would start running their promos, and you know, it was essentially, you know, the general public wouldn't really have this familiarity with the individual athletes or the sports, and you know, you get sort of a crash course over that 3-week period. But it's very difficult to build you know, more general awareness and to really promote a sport or an athlete where you don't have that kind of sustainable relevance. And I think that the way that companies look to social media to tell a story beyond just the results or the competition, I mean, I think that really helps because, you know, in my view, I mean, there's no greater sporting event, but I mean, just think of what it takes to get there, and much of that story is not really viewed during the games, and in many ways, you know, the best way to educate the general public about, you know, the road to Sochi, so to speak, or any of these games, is directly from the athletes, and social media is a great platform to do that.
Well, it's a great point, because as Americans, we want to be experts, right? We like to be experts, so if you're saying being able to educate the crowd, so if we can tune in, we can already know. Maura, you're hopping in?
Well, yeah, for us, I mean, social media has been huge, because it used to be, you know, London would have ended, and then people wouldn't have thought about the Olympics until right now. And instead, we've been able to use social media to continue growing our audience since London and continue sharing that Olympic story. So for us as a brand and just the Olympic movement in general, social media has been huge to be able to keep the conversation going. Like, it's not just every 2 years anymore, it's 24/7, which is huge when you talk about being able to educate people about the athletes and about their journeys and stories leading up to the games.
Does anybody have anything to see where it could possibly negatively affect viewership, or is that, in your minds, not even a possibility? It's going to do nothing but boost it.
I think it's only going to boost it. I mean, really, we are in a instant gratification type of world, right? Everyone's falling online. They're going to see it. But, again, the telling of the story and packaging it all together is going to be seen on television. So you're following the results, you know what's happening online, but you know, you get drawn in, you see this great comeback, you see these results, it's only going to increase the likelihood that you're going to watch it come TV time when NBC puts it on. And having social media, it's about, you know, broadening and deeper relationships and engaging and adding longevity. To Maura's point, it doesn't just happen in this couple-week window. It's before, during, and after. And so you're getting all this additional insight and information, and having more of a relationship with these athletes, I think it's going to make you want to watch them physically compete when you get home at night and watch it in prime time on NBC.
Elana, have you started to see that already? Is that something where, when you know, people have access to Universal Sports and all these other things, are you finding more people watching because they know you from social media now?
Without a doubt, I think social media has opened us up to a whole new fan base, and it's opened us up in ways we haven't been able to interact with fans before. Sure, in the past, they've known that we go down and sled. They don't really know much about bobsledding specific, and they don't really know much about us as athletes. The other thing we have is we're always in helmets. You get off the line, and they ask you a couple questions, and that's all you ever hear from a bobsledder. So the fact that we're able to go on social media and interact with our fans has definitely changed our game tremendously. I personally go on and thank every one of my fans after my races for their support, for their encouragement, and I think it's opened my marketability up to a whole new level.
And from the agent perspective, you guys see other dollars coming in because of that? No one
is that directed at me?
I'm either
I'll jump in too, Peter,
the Octagon or Wasserman side. Are you seeing it more engagement that way?
Peter, you go first.
Sure. Yeah, without question, and I think it's a tremendous advantage for the athlete now because, I mean, you know, as Elana says, I mean, it used to be that your only opportunity to connect with this viewership was when the camera turned to you, and that's it doesn't happen as frequently as you might like, and you can't control it. But now you can leverage that. You can leverage the sponsorship relationships. You can leverage the relationship with the USOC, and you can do that to build your own platform that you can control and build your own community, basically. And I think that's what's so much more sustainable now when it comes to marketing athletes and whatever programs they might have with sponsors. I mean, athletes themselves have a promotional platform to bring to the table that is not only sustainable, but it can grow over time.
Have you guys seen any of the partners, any of the sponsors? Is that something that's built into contracts for athletes?
Yes. I mean, from a Wasserman standpoint, 100%. I mean, generally, before you see performance clauses and their performance incentives based on how athletes perform, there are now the equivalents for social media. So hitting certain thresholds, whether it's growing your overall following on the platform, it's beyond just a social media deliverable standpoint of 2 posts per month. I mean, my team, what we do, work with the agents, are based on the brand and their goals and objectives, come up with custom campaigns that, from the athlete standpoint, are authentic, they want to do, and we work with the brand to strategize collectively, but then go execute and use the athlete's fan base to help push that brand message, and vice versa in terms of doing content. And so really, a lot of times for us, it's the first question brands are asking. I mean, they want to know exactly how large and engaged an athlete's social media following is, and especially with some of the action sports, which outside of a few key events, you're not getting the big television ratings, right? So you can't sell just against that. So more and more, it is about these deeper and engaged social media presences.
And it's actually adapted over time. When social media first started coming out, sponsors weren't as specific now about what they expected from social media from athletes and what they exactly wanted to see. Now, every single sponsor I've dealt with, we go through extensive media training, including social media, and what types of tweets are acceptable, what types of Facebook posts are acceptable and unacceptable, as specific as what kind of tweets and Facebook messages and posts they want to see related to their brand. So it's definitely changed, and it continues to change. It's not just a numbers game. It's what types of tweets and different social media you're putting out.
That's a good point. And go ahead.
No, just to hop in from the USOC standpoint, what we do with sponsors now, it is across all of our platforms. So it used to be that it would either just be TV or just be the website, and now there are purely social activations and social support of sponsor campaigns. And what we build out, it's really starting to be social first. Is it conducive to being posted on our platforms? Will it resonate with our audience in addition to their audience? So a lot of what we do with sponsors now is really grounded in social.
And Mara, aren't you doing that with athletes as well? Not just with the sponsors and using them, working together. I mean, we recently had the pleasure of working with the USOC with one of our hopefuls, Scotty Lago, in snowboarding, of doing essentially an Instagram takeover, a day in the life of Scotty Lago on the USOC channels about what he does as he's training and going to the Olympics. So telling his story from it being the morning to playing with his dog Camo, who he takes everywhere, which now brings a whole new interesting characteristic to Scotty that people might not know or see when he's competing, and to the point earlier when he's covered up in his helmet and all his logoed out gear, they don't know who he is. So it was allowed to tell that story and really reach new audiences. And from the USOC standpoint, I think you guys are using the athletes in a great way, and from a social media perspective, to tell those stories and make it more interesting for everyone to start following now. So come Olympics, they know everything about him and really want to watch.
Yep, absolutely.
And we've been fluffing social media a lot right now. Maura, what are some, from the USOC's concern, what are some of the worries? What are you on the lookout for right now, from now through the games, that's kind of on your radar to make sure that things don't go sideways?
I mean, first, I just hope the internet works. That's like my first concern. So if that doesn't work, then this is all pointless. But I mean, we have a whole ambush team set up. So what that means is, non-approved sponsors really aren't supposed to be posting with our marks or the Olympic marks or anything Olympic related. That said, obviously social media is what it is. But we have a team that's set up to make sure that, we don't have competitors buying keywords on Twitter that, that those sponsors shouldn't be showing up if they don't have an approved waiver from the USOC. So we have an ambush team that's kind of set up in place to do as much as we can to protect our sponsors and people who we've been working with long before the games come around. So we don't have, brands who are capitalizing on all the attention of the Olympics when they don't have a formal partnership with us and haven't been engaging with us like our current sponsors are. So I think that's probably, obviously a concern that's grown with social media. It wasn't around before, so really no one really had to worry if a competitor of a sponsor was going to post anything. It just wasn't there. So I think that's probably the biggest thing from an overall USOC standpoint.
Gotcha, thanks. And actually that leads to a great question we've got from Genjin online here on Twitter. And so from that standpoint, like, sponsors are spending a lot of money, they're putting a lot of resources in. What kind of, her question is, how can sponsors monetize the fan engagement on social to help justify resources and ROI? How is everybody seeing that happening out there?
I mean, again, it depends. You got to go case by case. What are the brand objectives? Are they trying to generate leads? Are they trying to sell a product? Are they trying to drive to retail? What exactly are they trying to do? So, starting with that objective, yes. I mean, you can create an ROI. But again, the first priority of social media, and I think the best way to leverage it, is creating those relationships, nurturing them, having a deep relationship, and in the right time have that call to action. Whatever that call to action is, goes towards that ROI. Sometimes the ROI might just be from an awareness standpoint, and then it's really just about eyeballs and engagement. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were talking about this earlier. I think the sponsors that really excel are when it is natural. So like BMW, like Elana was talking about, they helped build the sled. It's a natural integration, and it's easier to capitalize off of all of the conversation because it just makes sense, and there's a real integration with the sport and support of the sport. So I think as natural as the sponsor can make it so that it still supports their goals, I think that's where the success is.
And that goes with the sponsor engaging with the Olympic brand and those kind of things. And we've got a question from JD Trains here, and he wants to know, does the USOC, when it comes, so you're talking about there the brand with the sponsors, but on the athlete side of things, does the USOC, are you monitoring, or Elana, what have you heard? Maura, what have you guys been talking to? And from Peter and Zack's perspective, what have you been saying to your athletes? What kind of social media training, is that part of it right now, and how is that done?
Yeah, I mean, so we have an ambassador program for all the athletes. Elana can probably speak to it even better than I can, but we have, an ambassador program for the athletes that we walk them through. Obviously, everyone pretty much knows how to use social media. It's more of just how to protect yourself in terms of what you're posting, what you're allowed to post with Rule 40 and sponsors. So if you're sponsored by someone who doesn't have a Rule 40, what can you post? So it's really walking athletes through, what's acceptable so that they don't get in trouble. And from a safety standpoint, what you're posting before a competition. And if you're in the Olympic Village, you probably shouldn't be posting exactly where you are. So there's, guidelines that we walk athletes through.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the biggest things also in that media training, the social media training, is just explaining to the athletes that this is another opportunity to show our brand, to create a brand for ourselves and show it. I think a lot of athletes do run into trouble sometimes when, social media has increased our audience tremendously, but it also increased our criticism as well. So we have a bad race or we had a bad performance. People on social media are quick to let us know. So how you react to those kind of things and how your brand is portrayed can affect your bottom line, as whether sponsors want to talk to you because of your interactions with fans and whatnot. So one of the things that we went over in media training is that type of response and is that type of reaction where you get people online who aren't shy about their comments based on your performances.
Peter, Zach, anything to add to that?
Well, I think what we try to do is just as it relates to Rule 40, I think most of the whatever the infractions might be are inadvertent or have been, and you can address a lot of that just by educating the athletes as to how Rule 40, how Rule 50, how they apply, and how they're enforced, and that generally will take care of itself. But I think the bigger issue is to try to help the athletes to understand the opportunity that they have in developing their social media platform, because it's not something that was available 10 years ago, and it's really something that now, I think everybody on the panel has said that companies it's essential to companies, and they're building it into their agreements, and it's really part of the transaction now, and it's something that the athletes can control, and if they do it right, it's something sustainable. So when the world shifts their attention to World Cup, for example, it's not as though the athletes' relevance will just evaporate if they build their social media network properly. So I think it's important to understand the rules. I think it's important to understand the potential pitfalls, especially during the games when the spotlight is shining so brightly on these athletes. And keep an eye on the fact that be genuine, be authentic, but understand that this is a critical element to your career as a professional athlete, if that's what you want to be.
Yeah, similarly at Wasserman, we do and have ongoing social media training with the athletes and have absolutely broken down kind of Rule 40 and 50 for them. But to echo Peter's point, I think the more important thing here is talk about the opportunity, why it's important, what the benefits are, both from a fan base standpoint and just a value to the current partners, and down the line, the ability to attract new partners for those individual athletes. So we like to focus the conversation there on the opportunity, and then work with the athlete on things that they can do that are authentic. And naturally, the team is keeping a watch on everyone who will be participating in case some issues do come up that we can address quickly. But don't think any of those will happen.
And speaking, no, nothing. I'm sure nothing is going to happen on social media during the Olympics at all. Speaking of random things happening that athletes were given a voice to be able to talk about this, a certain NBC commentator who we all know and love, and it was one of my great honors in sport to have him say my name in a positive way in Vancouver. But just recently, a man named Bob Costas had something to say to who should be the president of the IOC. And for those of you who missed this, Bob Costas recently had mentioned that the president of the IOC should be Johnny Knoxville, because basically the stuff is just jackass stuff they reinvented and call it Olympics. Now, those kind of things gave snowboard athletes, gave half-pipe athletes a huge voice. What do you think is going to happen when something like that is said during the Olympic Games? What do you think that's going to? Social media is the place where all these things bubble up. What are the possible pitfalls that's going to have on athletes and brands? Again, if I'm asking the question correctly, if that kind of thing happens, or when that kind of thing happens again, where are the places for athletes to go, and what should they be doing during the Olympics?
I think starting with the Costas example, just because it was definitely talk of the day internally at the office when it went down. It was an unfortunate situation, in my opinion. You have a new sport coming into the first Olympics, and immediately kind of just undermine the legitimacy of it with the comments. And some athletes handled it extremely well. One of our, Sage Kotzenberg, was quoted in the USA Today, but basically commented on, like, for Bob Costas to come in not really understanding the sport and equate it to jackass on snow, it doesn't really encourage people to take it seriously and to watch it, which they should, because it is a incredible sport. They are terrific athletes competing in it. Come Olympic game time, you certainly will have some athletes that will respond right away harshly, and it will be talked about. From an agency standpoint and brands, we would definitely advise against that. And if they are going to make comments, have them be thought out and explain, more why the comment should not have been said is not logical, and you can disagree, but going on the offensive and attacking back is not going to make any athlete look good. It might get them to show up on Deadspin and get the trending from a social media standpoint, but really when we're putting that in a recap report to go back to the brand, it's not the same as a authentic connection, engagement, and eyeballs that way. So it will happen, to your point, and we work with our athletes constantly to make sure that they're not going to be responding directly in a way that would be disparaging or egging it on anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's some of the problems with social media sometimes is, as athletes, you read these different things, and it's so easy to respond emotionally right away. One of the things that some of my teammates do, that I do at times, is when any of these things occur, if you're going to tweet or if you're going to post about it, run it by somebody first. Run it by your roommate first to see if it's something logical. I do have a pretty I have a teammate, Lolo Jones, who's pretty active on Facebook, and she's one of those people who or pretty active on Twitter, and she's one of those people who does run her tweets now because of other circumstances. Previous tweets, she does run her tweets.
You guys have poor Lolo on a policing system right now?
But she's put herself on a policing system, so she's really cautious about what she puts out there, and she does want to interact with the fans, but at the same time she doesn't want to offend anybody, especially when she tries to be funny or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, with a lot of this stuff, I mean, if you view social media just as a as a bullhorn and use it reactively or emotionally, then that's all it will be. But if you're more strategic about it and you take it seriously as a platform, your own platform, then I think that's where it does make sense to take a step back and really think through what it is you want to say and why, and just be disciplined about it. I mean, you have to be real, but you don't have to respond and react to to every emotion that you have through social media.
Are you guys finding that's another stress place for you? Before, you had to worry about, when it came to the athlete's brand, you had to worry about what they would do if they went out at night. Would it make it on TMZ, or would it do anything like that? Is this just another place where you have to worry about a liability from your athletes, more as well from the Olympic Committee side?
Yeah, sure. I think technology in general has heightened the number of things that could come back and bite an athlete, but at the same time, it pales in comparison to the advantages that it provides to athletes. I mean, again, especially when you're talking about the Olympics or action sports, where it's so cyclical and you are so dependent upon somebody else's platform. It's such a great opportunity, and for the most part, I think these athletes understand that. They understand what is smart and not so smart as it relates to social media, and so there is that there are pitfalls, but I have to be honest, it's not something that you're worried about or stressed about every day, because I think athletes generally they understand how it works, and most of our clients are pretty intelligent in terms of how they use it.
Gotcha. And we're done. Go ahead, Zach.
I was just going to say, same vein, we're not overly worried. The benefits far outweigh the costs from it, and they do understand kind of the opportunity and should be as reactionary as they might want to, and if they run it by someone, realize it's probably best not to say it. So it's not so much a worry, but there are those calls that can come in late at night when social media is 24/7, which are unpleasant because you need to deal with them right away because everyone else will see it. But long game and overall, it's just an amazing platform for them to engage with that there's not a real worry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Coming from, when I put my Classroom Champions cap on, and we look at the role models that athletes can be via social media, and the fact that they can share their lives and they can show people their struggles, they can show kids their successes, and they can show everybody that it's not just this 2.5-week period on television every 4 years. It's this long journey and this long path, and people like Elana and a handful of other athletes that do such a great job in communicating that. And my passion myself is being able to communicate that passage and that message to kids and students across U.S. and Canada. And it's such a great platform from those perspectives. And we're down to about the last 10 minutes of our hangout here. So if anybody's got any questions that's watching right now, you can either shoot them to me at Steve Mesler. I'm assuming it's up on my screen here, or you can go ahead and hashtag Sports Sochi as well. I think at this point we'll start to let everybody have their parting shots as we go, and I'll interrupt you as we have some people come on here and maybe ask some questions. But Elana, we'll start with you. What are the things that you're looking forward to being able to share with the world at this point? I mean, you're gaining in followers. What's the things you want to share as you head towards Sochi?
I think the biggest thing that I want to share is just my story and just my passion for my sport. Like we've mentioned previously, our sports don't get much attention other than these 2 weeks in the games. I'm really looking to increase exposure for the sport of bobsled to grow the sport itself. I think we have a great bobsled tradition in this country, and the more and more people who know about it, the more and more people who can share in this passion that I have for the sport, it's only going to continue to grow. And I think from an athlete standpoint, you always want to see your sport grow for the competitiveness reasons, number one. Then number two, just because I'd like to see my kids be able to have an opportunity to compete for their country in bobsled and so on and so forth. So it's really about sport growth for me, and getting my story out there and show how universal our sport bobsled, even though you only see it once every 4 years, really is.
Awesome, thanks. Maura, from USOC's perspective, what are you excited about? This will be your first Olympics, right?
No, I went to London.
Oh, sorry, your first Winter Olympics. Your first Winter Olympics. My apologies.
First winter, yeah. I mean, what I love about the Olympics is that obviously right now there's so much controversy and almost negative things surrounding it. But what I love about the Olympics is that the positive stories always seem to come out and outweigh the negative, and people just really get behind that. And so I'm excited to see what those big stories are. There are always huge social media moments, I feel like, that happen during the Olympics since it's been around. But I'm excited to see what those moments are and what those, who the athletes are that America falls in love with, and what those big moments are. I think that's probably what's the most exciting.
Who's your favorite Winter Olympian? You can come on. You can choose.
Oh, I can't win.
Oh, come on.
No, I mean, I'm really, I love following Michaela Schifrin's story. I think that she's going to be really big, especially, with Lindsay out, and I think there's a huge opportunity to see another skier really emerge. I think, I really like following her story. I like Jaroselski speed skating. I think he's going to be really exciting to watch during the games. There's too many. Elana. I think, no, I mean, I really think.
Good answer.
No, I think, the bobsled teams, both men and women this year, I think are going to be really huge. Not just social media-wise, but just to watch in terms of those big moments that we were talking about. Yeah.
Great.
Too many to name.
You did a good job. You handled that one well. You handled that one well. We won't hold it against you. Peter.
What am I looking forward to with these games? I mean, I guess, in terms of social media, I think it's having seen, what a difference, the games can make for an athlete's social media platform if they do it right during the games. It's a huge benefit. I mean, there's a lot of talk about what you can't do through social media while you're at the games, but there's so much that you can do, and regardless of how quickly you can, take advantage of that or commercialize it, just building that, that audience and that community during the games. I mean, if you have a great performance and if you're active with social media, entirely in the rules, you're going to come out of those games with a dramatically increased following that, again, if you're smart about it and you're strategic about it and you have good content, you can keep, you can sustain, and that's an entirely different opportunity that you can present to sponsors outside of the games than used to be the case. So, you know, as the technology continues and with each games it changes, it'll be interesting to see the impact that social media has for the athletes that are competing in Sochi.
And speaking of talking about changing technology, Zach, before we let you have your parting words here, we got another question from JD Trains, and it's actually a pretty good one, and it's hilarious the way it's put. Does anyone see value in non-traditional social media platforms like Snapchat, big younger user base to grow sports, etc.? It's kind of funny to think that there's now traditional social media platforms, but
I don't know if I would call Snapchat non-traditional when they have 50 million snaps a day and they turn down a $3 billion offer from Facebook. Yeah. I think it's a player in the space right now of the 13 to 25-year-olds, but it is still a platform that, compared to the others, is small and is about the deeper relationships, not necessarily eyeballs. And I think Snap Stories is going to be very interesting. Definitely a player coming into it. You will see a lot there. All of them in conjunction will be working together, and who can leverage all the platforms and make them work in concert using the great content that they have, like Peter mentioned, to really put it out there and increase their own following and add value to partners. But there'll be a lot of Snapchat stories. There'll be some funny jokes, I'm sure, made by some commentators, but it's a legitimate player right now.
And more, is there anything else out there that you guys are keeping your eyes on or getting engaged in?
No, I mean, I think for us, it's picking which platforms to be on and really doing them well. We're a small team, so I think it's not realistic to say we're going to be on every single platform and be good at it. I think for us, it's focusing, right now, it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and we're starting to be on Pinterest, because we know that we can have good content and keep it up and do it really well. I think as our team continues to grow, which hopefully it will, then we can expand and keep our eye. We're always keeping our eye on it, but I think being able to curate really good content on a consistent basis, because it's not worth it if you're just on it to be on it, to throw in a deck and say that you're on this platform if you're not really curating the audience and engaging with them. So.
All right, great question from our audience there, and that brings us to Zach. Zach, what is that? What are that thing or those things that you're looking forward to come next month in Sochi?
Yeah, I think from an athlete standpoint, it's the new stars, right? There are going to be stars created strictly from social media moments, like several people have said, on the panel so far. It'll be from competition, but there'll be the social media moments that will generate new stars. People will focus on, and it'll get communicated everywhere in the press. And then also from a brand standpoint, who is timely, who's witty to create those new stories, similar to what Oreo did around the Super Bowl with the blackout. There's going to be a couple of those moments as well. So, looking forward to those stories, both from an athlete and a brand standpoint, who those no stars are going to be and how they use social media to put them in that status.
Do you guys think it's to the point now where athletes are, we know brands are planning, right? We know brands have these campaigns planned during the games. Is it to the point where athletes now have their brand plan or their strategic social media plan set up for the games?
Not planned. It's all about being authentic, right? So there's some that are very engaged, and yes, they probably have some idea of, I want to make sure I do X, Y, and Z at some point, but then the rest is going to be once they're there and the experience, and they might be walking around with social media in the back of their head of, how could this look on one of my platforms? I want to share this with my fans. I don't think any athlete has it fully mapped out, because that's just contrived and forced, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very hard to fully map out an exact plan, not only for authenticity, but also for competition reasons. At the end of the day, we're all there. We're all going to the Olympics to win medals. And, as well-intentioned as you are sometimes about interacting with your fans and sponsors and all these relationships, our focus is, once again, on competing. So even the best laid plans sometimes go to the wayside when a workout comes up that you didn't expect, or travel plans change, or some things like that. So for me, social media really, my plan and my strategy towards social media really has to be authentic and flexible for what's going on with my competition schedule and what the priority is.
Good point. And like you said, Zach, it's that authenticity that is social media. It's that authenticity of the fact that the five of us were able to hop in from all corners of North America to be able to put something like this together. So I want to thank #SportsConf for putting this all together. I want to thank everyone for joining us. It's been a great conversation, a great afternoon. Really appreciate it. And best of luck, Elana. Good luck. I will talk to you, I'm sure, in the next few weeks. Everyone else, good luck heading over there with your athletes, with your brands, and everything you've got going on.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.